Hi kids, I'm here with your Bible story. Um, we talked about last time, wasn't it? Yes. Abraham's greatest test, where um, God wanted to see if he would attempt to sacrifice Isaac in order to let God know that he was faithful to him. Well, in between, after that, Isaac grows up. Abraham and Sarah's son Isaac grows up and marries a woman named Rebecca. Well, Rebecca bears twins to Isaac, and they are Jacob and Esau. So we're going to pick up there today. Because see, Esau was the oldest, so which would have gave him the right as the oldest to have the birthright, to carry on the line of everything his father owned would be his. But that's not what happens. Becomes Jacob's instead. How does that happen? Well, let's get into the story. A birthright for a bowl of stew. You can find in Genesis, the first book of the Bible, chapter 25, verse 27. And the boys grew, and Esau was a cunning hunter, a man of the field, and Jacob was a plain man, dwelling in tents. Now, we'll get into the story. After Abraham had lived to be an old man, and had his son Isaac grow up and marry a fine and beautiful wife, he died. From the years long before, when God had called him to leave his home in Ur, he had followed God's every command. He had even been ready to sacrifice his own son Isaac when the Lord asked him to do that. God had blessed Abraham for his goodness, even though some of his promises did not come true until many more years had passed. Abraham had become the first of God's specially chosen people, chosen to learn his ways. Into the same family one day, God planned to have his own son be born, which is Jesus. Until then, he planned to watch over and lead his people, the children of Abraham, and to give them the land of Canaan for their home. Now Isaac and his wife Rebekah were like Abraham and Sarah. They too were married a long time before they had any children. Like Abraham, Isaac wondered how God was going to make theirs a great and wonderful family when they had no children. Rebekah wanted a baby very badly, and Isaac prayed to God that he would give her one. God heard Isaac's prayer, and he answered it by giving them not one son, but two, twin boys. Now some twins are just alike, but these were very different. The first one to be born was a red little boy, covered with soft hair. They named him Esau, which means hairy. The second baby was smooth-skinned and pink, and they called him Jacob. Before the babies were born, God had told Rebekah a strange thing about them. He had said, "These children are to be two different nations. One people will be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger." As the twins grew up, it certainly appeared that Esau was the stronger. He was a rugged boy who loved to hunt and stay outdoors. Jacob was not weak, but he was quieter and more gentle. It was too bad that the boys were against each other from the beginning. Esau, with his red face and thick hair, was Isaac's favorite. After a day of hunting, Esau would bring Isaac some of the deer meat he had gotten and tell him of the ventures of the hunt. Isaac loved to eat the meat and listen to Esau. He was so proud of his strong son, and he loved Esau best. Jacob, however, was his mother's favorite. Rebekah could see that Jacob was the stronger in goodness. After the boys were grown, Esau continued his life on hunting. Jacob was the family shepherd and farmer. One day, probably as he was in the field with the sheep or working with the crops, Jacob stopped to build a fire and cook himself a little pot of stew. As he was stirring it, Esau came in, tired and hungry from an unlucky hunt. When he saw the stew Jacob was cooking, he asked Jacob for some of it. Perhaps there was only enough for one, and Jacob argued with him about it. Finally, Esau grew very tired and said, "I would give anything I own for something to eat." "Even your birthright?" asked Jacob. "What good would a birthright be to me if I died of hunger?" answered Esau. "Promise the birthright shall be mine, and the stew will be yours," said Jacob. So Esau promised, and eagerly grabbed the mess of pottage, as stew was sometimes called. Just that easily, Esau gave up the greatest thing he owned, which back then was your birthright, because the oldest always got everything when something happened to their father. You see, the birthright usually belonged to the oldest son, and it meant that when the father died, he would be the head of the family and own all that his father had owned. It also meant that he would be the leader of the family, the wisest one, the closest to God. For just a little food to make him happy at that moment, Esau traded these blessings. Actually, this foolish trade had a place in God's plans, although neither Esau nor Jacob nor their parents realized it. God was letting this happen to make true his promise to Rebekah that the older shall serve the younger. Esau, the older, had given up the birthright to Jacob, who was the younger. So Jacob sold his birthright to his younger brother for a pot of stew. It happens a little slightly different in the adult version of the Bible. Rebekah goes in, has Jacob go in and put some fur on his hands and stuff, because Esau was the hairy one and Jacob wasn't. And Isaac, their dad, was blind by this point. He couldn't see very well or at all. And Rebekah had Jacob trick his father Isaac into believing that he was Esau. So Isaac gave Jacob his blessing. And then because once you give the blessing, you can't take it back. And he gave the best blessing to Jacob because he thought he was Esau. And then when Esau came in, Isaac told him it was too late, my son, because he had already given the blessing to Jacob, even though he thought it was Esau. But Esau begged him to give him a blessing, so Isaac blessed him as well. But Jacob was to rule over Esau. So the family line is going to continue in Jacob's. Jacob will inherit everything, his father, and will go down the line from Jacob, when we would have went down the line from Esau. But see, Jacob was a gooder man. He had a purer heart. That's why God wanted him to lead up to his son Jesus. So we will follow from Jacob's story from here on out. So I hope you guys enjoyed. And as you know, Jacob is the grandson of Abraham, because Isaac was Abraham's son, and Jacob is Isaac's son. So Abraham is Jacob's grandfather. I can't get my words right. You know what I'm trying to say. Abraham is Jacob's grandfather. And we're going to take Jacob's story from here on out and see who follows down the line after Jacob. Now, Jacob has many children. Now, I'm not going to get into all that we'll get into that some in the next story. But I hope you guys enjoyed this story of the birthright of Esau and Jacob. And I hope you guys are enjoying the Children's Bible series. And I hope you come back to listen to more. Bye, guys. God bless.